and work on additional unceded territory of the Squamish. Peoples have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Lake Philippon, Bowen Island. First item on our agenda is introduction of late items. We'll look for a corporate officer for the introduction of any late items here today.
There are no late items.
With that, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda. Please moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. All in favor? Fine. And that carries unanimously. Moving on to public comments. I'll look for a corporate officer for any public comments here today.
There are no public comments.
No public comments. And with that, we'll move right into delegations. 4.1. Alan Campbell from Circle Ferries regarding an update on electric passenger ferry service. Over to you folks at the presentation table.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having us here today. And it's nice to be in your beautiful new building. And I think last time we were on Bowen, invited many of you on a demonstration last summer, where which an important piece of what we're doing is to kind of prove out what the technology does, that it works, that it exists. And since that time, we've been making steady progress, and that really is the update that we want to provide today. The progress we're making with Vancouver, with Gibsons, with the venture as a whole, and then also where we stand right now with Bowen, and then some next steps that we're seeing with that as well. So we did have a deck. Lovely. And we're planning about, I don't know, about 10 minutes or something, and then we can open up to questions and discussion. So just now. Great. Yeah, so next slide. There we go. So yeah, first we'll give you an update on our new name. I think last time we were here, we were Green Line, and now we're Circle. We'll talk about landing sites and then some of the next steps. So next slide. So yeah, we've made a hard switch. Our name is now Circle Ferries. Same company, same incorporation structure, all the rest. So we're working with the same partners as well on our design and our financing as well. So our new livery is a black and white design that you're seeing right here. I'd say this might be a good moment to tell you that we are in discussion with all three nations, Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh. And specifically, all of them are the cultural representation, of course. And I think we've got lots of opportunity to do that. So, is this the final livery of our vessel? Probably not, but this is where we are right now. So I guess the big news is we've made some real strides on a Vancouver landing spot. So as we've talked about forever, we need a great landing spot in Vancouver to make this venture work. We spoke with TransLink for about a year, trying to access Seabus. That wasn't available. And so really it was about this time last year, that through a conglomeration of support, we got the door open on this site, which is Harbour Green Park, and that's the Harbour Green Dock. So essentially, the city of Vancouver was willing to entertain a proposal from us on that site. And since that time, we've worked really hard. We've hired our own engineering, our own naval architects, our own architects on designing what this site needs to be. And we work directly with city staff on that. It's been a really good working relationship. And at the end of the day, I think we've come up with something that does a number of different things. It provides a landing spot for our ferry via the charge barge, which some of you may recognize. And it also maintains public docking for others as well. So it maintains its public dock space as well.
Can we ask questions about the slides as we go along? Or
For sure, yeah.
So the charge barge is also where the ferry is going to dock and unload and load people.
That's correct. Yeah, and I should mention, a big piece of this was BC Hydro. So working with BC Hydro on what does that grid connection look like. So that was another $100,000 of funding that we received from BC Hydro to do that work as well. So I should say it wasn't all funded by us. That piece was funded by BC Hydro. So we've done an awful lot of work on this site.
So if you can help me identify the buildings in the picture, in the far upper left is with all the flags, that's the convention center? Or is it?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and then this red roof slope building, that's
the Tap and Barrel restaurant.
Oh,
And that's kind of where the Cactus Club is as well. So
Okay.
where the
right.
Jack Pool Plaza, the one with the, yeah.
And then in front of that, it looks like there's parkland basically with along the waterfront.
Correct, that's where the seawall sort of begins as you come down from the convention center. So so the appeal of the site is it's about a 10-minute walk to Canada Line and Seabus. So it's 10 minutes sort of up the stairs there or around an accessible way. It's also directly accessible to downtown Vancouver, just crossing that green there, that Harbor Green, you're directly on West Cordova. And then from there, you know, you're stone's throw from the Bentall buildings and whatnot. So you're very, very close to downtown if you're heading down to one of those towers there.
Is there public transit there now?
They're the closest, I mean, obviously the closest hub is going to be like the waterfront.
Yeah.
There is a TransLink bus, but the service is not very good. There is in the convention center, just under the stairs, there are Evos, there's bike share, there's all kinds of different things right there. So I'd say this was a great working relationship with the city. We do have the parameters of what that lease would look like for that site. It's a 10-year lease. There would be revenue sharing at that site, so we would provide funding based on a per passenger capacity, and that sort of gives alignment to the project. Like the city and Parkport, like we're all aligned. We want passengers to come down to this space. So so that's been a nice. It's been a good working relationship. We've talked about wayfinding. You know, so we're feeling like it's a strong site. There is another motion coming on Wednesday with the City of Vancouver Mayor and Council. The one last week that you may have heard about was with Park Board essentially transferring or willing to transfer that site to the city. The one that's coming up on Wednesday will be essentially authorizing the city will authorize city staff to sign the agreement with us. Great, and here's our site for Gibson's. Many of you may have seen this one before. So once again, this is our charge barge site, you know, funded once again through BC Hydro, another $100,000 worth of study and kind of thinking that goes into how this is going to work. In the end, we think this isn't necessarily going to be the site. We think it's going to be tucked around the concrete wharf, more in the day use area. And the town of Gibson's is doing all kinds of things right now to look at reconfiguring Lower Gibson's for passenger-only ferries, how that's going to work. So, so we've been working really closely with the city staff there, and they're advancing their own initiatives in this space, recognizing that passenger-only ferry service is how they want to grow. So with the motion, the parameters we've worked with the city of Vancouver, we'll be going through those same, having the same discussions now with the town of Gibson's. Yeah. Next one. And by comparison, this is a relatively empty site. This is Bowen Island, this is Seymour Bay, as you know, the site of what we think is going to be a great site for the ferry service. Bowen is underdeveloped in terms of our progress, our work on the site. We just are not as far along as we'd like to be with Bowen. And I think this means a few different things for us. In part, as you know, we're working with the property developer there who's looking to bring up a bunch of housing, and these seem to be aligned projects in many ways, but we also want to make sure that they make sense in terms of time. You know, we're pushing this venture really hard. We're looking to launch this venture in 2028, and we want to make sure that we have things available for us when we do that. We are with the work we've done in Vancouver, we can run an out and back from Vancouver without charging on Bowen. So that is possible to run vessels straight out of Vancouver and back, which actually does give us some flexibility. And partly that's why we're here today, is to look at, if we were to potentially phase this in 2 different stages, is there another place where we could launch the service to begin? Even recognizing that at the end of the day, we'd like to be Seymour Bay for all the different reasons we talked about. We can move on to the next slide. So yeah, I mean, here's some of the the next steps that we would see for Bowen, and I guess before we get there, I just want to say, like, we've been working, rolling this boulder uphill for quite some time now and making good progress, right? You can see that progress. And we're also working really closely with these other communities as well, who are finding ways to support as well. So I guess, when we go through the list of next steps, I guess, is there a role for yourselves as well? Or are there other partners on Bowen we should be looking to as well to move this forward? It's an awful lot of, we're not running a business until we've got 3 sites sorted out, right? And so that is a lot of work for us to do. I'm just going to be open and honest with that. And I guess, maybe another piece to this is it's kind of amazing to see these communities, sort of come together and sort out their own transportation issues, right? Like I recognize there's a role for BC Ferries and a role for the province, and I can coordinate an attempt like this, but this is also a place where the communities themselves can self-organize, right? And I think that's kind of the really exciting thing is actually happening. So just to go through these next steps, so what we'd love to do, with the site, and for Bowen is, we do a marine structure assessment. We look at, where the dock goes, where do the piles go, kind of a very technical orientation. That would be something that we would need to do. We've got the same engineering firm that we've been using to do the 2 other sites. We need to do an electrical grid connection study. Ultimately, we would love charging in all 3 sites so we have resiliency. So we're not reliant on Vancouver for the charging. On Bowen, we look to have charging in all 3 sites. And then, of course, this idea about, and especially if it's Seymour Bay, what do those connections look like? How do we actually make that work? Which has been a long-standing question mark, I think. TransLink, those 2, or the buses that run on Bowen are some of the least used buses of TransLink's network. And so the question is, what else can we do? There is, and we're thinking outside the box here, Ride Hail is interesting. There are communities in Ontario, Innisfil, I believe. They actually, they've foregone their transit in favor of subsidized Ride Hail because for them, for their sides of community, it makes sense. And so I think that there are other ways of getting around. And I think, maybe it depends on geography, maybe it depends on the type of people who need to get around. But, maybe a backbone of a bus doesn't make sense all the time. I think there are other options and local options too. I mean, when we talk about Ride Hail, it doesn't have to be Uber. It doesn't have to be Lyft, right? There's, on the Sunshine Coast, there's the Coastal Rides, right? That's a local ride hail company that provides that service. So I kind of want to think about other opportunities for getting around Bowen without a car, even if just Seymour Bay. And then, of course, we'd love to hear where you're at on some of your active transportation paths and that type of thing as well. So that's our update really for you today. This is really good progress for Vancouver and Gibsons, and we want to build this momentum with Bowen Island. We need 3 sites to run the service, and we want to sort of build that same type of momentum.
Okay. Start with Councilor Morris.
So, sounds like running something from Seymour Bay is in the future, and from your perspective, and you would prefer to run something from the Cove to start with, just because there's dock facilities there that hopefully we could use.
We're potentially musing on the idea, and I think part of that would need it's not readily perfect right now. I mean, we were just down there right now. The gangway, for example, is not wheelchair accessible, right down to the water taxi dock. So I think there are some things that there's some issues, but is there an easier place that we could start with Bowen without the same magnitude of investment? That's correct.
And if you were to go out to Seymour Bay, do you know if there is does anybody have the license for the water lot lease that's out there that shows up on the map, but we can't figure out who owns it?
That's still all work we need to do. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you've been looking at Slug Cove. That's our current hub, like Gibson's. all of our water-based transportation right now goes from Slug Cove. We used to have Miller's Landing and Seymour Landing in, you know, different places that the steamships would come back in the day, but the way our settlement pattern has happened and all of our transportation plans and everything, people get down to the cove and they know they can get off the island. So active transportation paths, we've got a transportation plan, we've got an active transportation network plan now. And working towards them, we've got the multi-use pathway that you've seen running partway towards the middle of the island. We have had Bowen Lift, and it's a ride share platform that was developed and got going before COVID struck, and then COVID kind of made you weren't supposed to get into cars with other people. I kind of think so. That's part of the reason that it didn't get picked up, but also it needs a better web app than was able to be funded at the time. So we've experimented with some of these things, and others in the room probably know more about the current buses that we're experimenting with as well. I think the Muni's got one, and so does one of the local groups, and seniors are looking at that as well. So anyway, Bowen has a track record of looking at transportation options.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of them already either trialed or even with TransLink, they trialed a on-demand bus.
Yeah.
And but there's more active stuff happening now in little bus planning. So
It's okay.
Yeah, the Canadian Organization for the Blind and the Deafblind has been given one bus from TransLink, and they've just had it in for upgrades, so that there's all sorts of accessibility and safety things that have been done, and it's just coming on to work this summer. And it was primarily so that they could get their staff and their clients out to Xenia. So bus route didn't go there, and they were having real problems with transportation. So they've got that project and funded by the feds in December of 26. And what's happened since is that when council was at UBCM last September, we had a meeting with TransLink, and we mentioned that they had all these extra buses that were sitting in parking lots in Richmond, and what were they doing with recycling? And so they offered us, the municipality, another bus. It's contingent on us having a community partner to work with. That's going to be COBD. And there's test program that's just about to start up with Seniors Keeping Young organization to have either the COBD bus or the extra one from TransLink that hasn't come on site yet. We're starting with the COBD bus to see, and then there's going to be a test run, and that's going to come to council in terms of whether or not we're going to support having this extra bus come online. So there's parameters to that in terms of not being in competition with TransLink, to having difficult terrain, and if people with accessibility problems have to have door-to-door service, what that means in terms of getting a bus into some of these driveways and out again. But that's what's going to be tested in terms of getting, there's 15 people signed up for the first activity tomorrow, for them to be picked up by bus and brought down to the ferry, and then over public transportation to the West Van Rec Center. So that's our test run. And if that works well, and it's good responses from the participants, then the Seniors Keeping Young are going to try and figure out how to work within the COBD timetable in terms of what they need to see whether or not they can use it on island. It's going to be difficult to get it off island. So there's other work in terms of making connections. So that's what's just about blossomed, and start work on Bowen. So if that is a model,
Yeah.
that works in terms of having little buses. We also, COBD is also eligible to get a DART contract, which is part of TransLink, which is just for accessibility. So that might be another thing that they're exploring. So if that works and it's both economical with all the rising fuel prices and everything else. And we haven't talked about getting an electric bus, but then that is potentially something that could be part of a ride hail, and that did work well before COVID and TransLink studied that. And I think with the problem on Bowen is getting people back out of their cars, right? So with all of the tourists coming over with cars and with all of the lineups and with cancellations, with all of that, we still have to, I think, communicate to people that there's other options.
Yeah.
In terms of getting onto the boat and getting some service on the other side.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been putting my nose in where I have absolutely no responsibilities for this other thing, but I'm quite curious, so I've been keeping track. So that's what's happening with the little bus programs. I have an open house once a month and people come and ask questions, and then your ferry has come up a number of times with people wondering about Seymour Bay in terms of it being, and the picture that was on the slide is, it's wide open. And it's, you know, if we could somehow get another boat into Snug Cove, that's one of our best protected
Sure.
accesses to the island. But there's all sorts of upland problems in terms of capacity for parking and, you know, all of the congestion that happens there and the competition with VC ferries, just in terms of people walking off and using all of the facilities. So it's ideal, but it's the worst at the same time. So some ideas in terms of what's the amount of space you need.
Yeah.
And, you know, what's realistic in terms of Snug Cove. I think that kind of assessment would be very helpful for everybody. And if it's upland transportation in terms of TransLink and getting more people to use the system, then maybe that is something that we can help with. But those kinds of issues, it's like we all have ideas, but it's all very anecdotal. It's like having some sort of a transportation survey of something that is more, I guess, engineered in terms of making sure that we do understand what the problems are. That would be very, very helpful. And I'm not sure, we tried for federal funding to get some research done, and we were not successful with that grant, but maybe we can renew that in terms of some funding that's there. But have you done a marine survey around Bowen in terms of any of the other locations that, if Seymour Bay is problematic, are there others that anywhere that, you know, not in Cape Roger Cruise, in conservation area, not in, you know, Deep Bay used to have boats coming in to the CNIB, but that's got major problems out.
Yeah.
And in terms of parking and access and the rest of it in the community, but are there other places around Bowen that have any potential for exploration?
We did look at, consider Mannion Bay, just because it's also close to Snug Cove, so I don't know the area that well. But it is open. I've seen docks over there, so it seems viable for a boat to go in there. But I think it's all private, if I had clear.
That's where the CNIB is.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of issues in terms of parking and vehicle access. So that might be one.
But,
Transportation.
if I could just pop in for a moment, the municipality has a license of occupation for all of Mannion Bay.
Okay.
And we staff run the little buoys and things. We're trying to bring back the eelgrass and the manage some of the anchoring issues. There used, you know, so there's a bunch of that already in place through Bowen staff, and we have waterfront access at Sandy Beach and at Pebbly Beach,
Yeah.
beaches. And I believe there's another right of way that runs fairly level from the traffic circle at Cardina, where little buses turn around. It goes on an angle flat across to the near end of Sandy Beach, which is municipal. So maybe there's some more possibilities than might be imagined.
There's lots of other problems upland. The other one was Mount Gardner, and that may be water access, but it's also huge problems upland in terms of one skinny little road that has
Yeah.
absolutely no parking on the shoulder.
Yeah.
There's a dock there now
Yeah.
that needs upgrades, but you know, I think it would probably be good for a boat coming in, be sheltered, but there's significant problems. in terms of- So, yeah, it'd be very interesting if there's any other place, even on the, you know, other sides of the island that we haven't thought of.
I think it will be good to explore other options, which what fits Bowen Island. Like, what's your vision for where you want to see development happening? Because like I said, Snug Cove can get busy. That's what the traffic is, and Mannion Bay be close by. It is sort of close and doesn't cause the congestion coming into Snug Cove. But if you have ideas, I'm sure that we're more than happy to explore it, to see how we can get, you know, people of Bowen Island off the island and back onto the island as efficiently as possible.
I think maybe if I can just jump in as well, like, I think our preferred solution is Seymour Bay,
Yeah.
right? Having a charge barge at Seymour Bay with a development, right? I think that sort of makes sense. It checks a lot of boxes. But I guess the question is, what can we do sooner, right? What can we do and how do we make this work? When we initially had an open house on Bowen about Snug Cove, it looked like a lot of difficult logistics to work through. And I guess if we're looking at Snug Cove, I guess we're also looking to you. Can you help us work through some of these issues about dedicated access to the water taxi dock, for example? So we'd always know we had a spot, things like that.
Yes, from this seat here, I'm just curious, just in the Snug Cove versus Seymour Bay sort of sites, what does that do for overall travel time to,
It's not that different.
it's not that,
It's not that different. No, it's a couple of miles.
Yeah.
okay,
A little bit of slowdown coming into Snug Cove, but
right, so going kind of north to the island and to get isn't much different.
I mean, like the very north of Bowen
Yeah,
Island.
what would the route be from Snug Cove over to Gibson?
It's not a direct runs. It's Gibson's into Vancouver and.
Oh, right.
Bowen into Vancouver,
Right.
so they're not,
It's not a circle.
it's not a circle.
So a couple of pieces from the CETA, we talked about the transit piece, relatively in depth. I mean, we can always have conversations, with TransLink. They'll be going through a couple of new investment plans, in short order. We are really, rounding error on their budget. So if there's something out there that we could advocate for, maybe there could be increased service. I think the more promising route, that Councilor Getty was speaking to was the pilot program of the community shuttle that's coming, and it TransLink several years ago had a pilot program on the island where it was an on-demand shuttle bus that worked via that. Worked really well. The Seymour Bay versus Snug Cove decision, clearly there's more infrastructure in Snug Cove already. I mean, it brought a smile to my face, seeing like City of Vancouver, Gibson, and then just greenfield land there at Seymour Bay. You know, aside from a little triangle of parkland there that the municipality owns, you know, we don't have much out there. I think we would be willing to have discussions on either site as to what's needed. But part of that would need to come from Circle Ferries itself. So, you know, in my familiarity with how things progressed in Vancouver and in Gibson, you folks did the engineering work, the mock-ups and the site inspections and the BC Hydro work and things like that. So if there's tangible pieces there, I think we'd be happy to look at it. You know, we do have the government dock on one side, there's the pier on the other side that's municipal as well, so, which is due for some major rehab and retrofit as well, so this might be a good time for projects, down there. And then on the municipal end, you know, for us, it would be looking at, it's a pretty choked off area right at the, that ferry pier is doing some work to look at pedestrian flow and vehicle flow and things like that. So long story short, I mean, we would love to have a passenger ferry here. We would love to have circle ferries here. And I think you would find us more than willing to work with you on that.
Yeah.
In any way, shape or form. Just let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Councilor Rick?
Yeah, I'm just curious, what's the transit time from, say, Snug Cove to Vancouver?
Yeah, so Seymour to Vancouver is about 40 minutes, and that's quite conservative. So in Snug would be a little bit more, probably 45.
Okay, and if we go with Snug Cove temporarily, and it's difficult to get charging in there on a temporary basis. You mentioned you could have enough charge to get back to Vancouver, but what would that do to your schedule?
Yeah, good point. So if we were to go into anywhere other than Seymour, we probably wouldn't bring a charging. It's just too much. It's too much. A little bit of charging doesn't do much. We need a lot of charge. And so it does throttle the amount of service we can provide. So we did look at that when we looked at Vancouver, how much service can we provide? And I think it's up to 3 sailings a day and certainly not more than that to serve Boa without charging.
Councilor Getty, followed by Councilor Morris.
So the other question that gets asked frequently is, what do you think the cost would be to
Yeah.
walk-on passenger?
Yeah,
So present business model, even with all the escalating. prices?
Yeah. I mean, since we started this, there's been all kinds of different escalations, right? So we're looking somewhere about $20 to $25, something like that. So, and we recognize that there's multiple different audiences we're trying to serve. Some are going to be commuters, some are going to be summertime tourists, right? There's going to be multiple different people traveling. And the key is it's always a time savings, right? I think so. It's both those things, right? It's going to be, it's not driving your car, and there's going to be a time savings.
So that's half the price of parking the car in Vancouver.
And I think, and just talking on price, I mean, it's sort of interesting right now, or, the world that we're in right now with the price of diesel, for example, where, that's commodity based on world markets that do what world markets do. BC Hydro is a regulated rate. That is not something that's changed for us. We know what our costs will be.
How long does it take to charge? Fully charge?
Yeah, anywhere from about 20 minutes to 90 minutes. It depends. So for example, in summer, in the morning, when we want to get back-to-back commuter runs, we'll sharpen up that charge time as much as possible. In midday, we'll do a full charge all the way.
Maybe a cheeky question.
Okay.
When's the contract being signed on boats?
Yeah, well, I think having that Vancouver landing site's key for us. And I think, those investors have got a number of conversations booked up after that state meeting. So I think that's, we don't advance until we have 100% of the funding sorted out. And the business plan is based on having landing at 3 sites right now.
Yeah.
That's what we have. So we need all those things in place before we advance. So it's tricky because you've got to work all together, right? It's a puzzle, and you've got to bring all the pieces together at the same time.
Okay. And then from ideally in the very near term, what are you looking for from Bowen Island on our council here?
So things that can help. Here's a brainstorm, right? Things that can help are, here's what we're going to do with transit, for example. and to follow through on your idea. Here's how we're going to enable transit for the Circle Ferry. Calamandarin, you don't need to worry about that. We're going to handle that piece. Here's how people are going to access the ferry. I think things like that would help.
Okay.
I think understanding, for example, the induced demand, just the tourist induced demand, like making sure we have a full picture. Our ridership model is all based on market capture, or sorry, commuter capture right now. You know, understanding that full picture on what that looks like. That's another, you know, that's another important piece for us. I think those are, you know, and I think if we find ways to, you know, these engineering studies are just part of the development work, but if we can work on those together, if you can find benefits to those, if we can co-share some of those studies, that would also help. These are, you know, these are big pieces that we're taking on at our risk because we know this is the right thing to do. So those are three ideas.
So if I'm reading between the lines a little bit, it's you'll get people from the dock, and there's also looking for some partnership with the municipality to get people to your boat.
Right? Whether it be municipality or even the introduction of the people who can't, right, on boat, right? But you know, us trying to figure out the entire trip, right, from people from like Sills Drive, or you know, like that's a big piece for us, and or even parking, and you know, when we get those questions, what are you going to do about parking, right? That's like we'd like a combined effort on questions like that, so we're not feeling responsible for those questions.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I think you'll find that there's a lot of general support for this project on the island. We're certainly looking at issues of transit here, and we're happy to weave a potential ferry or passenger ferry into that, in particular with my own conversations with TransLink as well. And then, yeah, really looking for more details either on Seymour Bay, and you know, there's a developer down there that's interested in doing some work and some projects there as well that we can have some discussions, particularly around the parking piece and what usage down there could look like. And then in Snug Cove, I mean, what you see is what you get down there. So if there's the ability for you folks to take a look at how could we make this work in that tight area, and I'd love to see what comes back from that.
Okay.
Councilor Morrison, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'd be curious to know if the boat would even fit in the south dock.
It'll fit, when we looked at it, it won't fit between where the Capilano sits because it's got the
wing.
pads, the wing walls. But further south, you can probably fit the boat there. Because the boat's about 10 meters wide. So it can fit there, or it could even fit, what was the dock that we docked at last year? At Union Steamships.
Yeah.
At Union Steamships, they have a spot over there that could possibly fit.
But it wouldn't fit on the south dock between the Union Steamship docks and the,
Between the wing walls.
no, not on the east side of the south dock, but on the west side of the south dock.
But maybe it could fit there.
But I don't know where else it would fit because
Yeah,
it can't fit across the end.
could definitely look at the map and get a feel for it. I have to look at the water depth too as well. I mean, we're not that deep, it was about 1.5 meters in draft, but we can definitely look at it and see.
Yeah, I just couldn't quite fathom if it's, how wide is the boat?
10 meters,
Yeah, so that's 100 feet, no, 30 feet.
30 feet,
Yeah,
30 feet, yeah.
yeah, so I don't know whether it would fit on the
Mhm.
inside.
I mean, I've seen big yachts come in the Union Steamship.
Yeah, they
so-
fit on the outside of the Union. Steamship
Yeah.
Docks.
So maybe that could be something we could look at too, the outside. of
Well, I
Union.
think we need to look at both sides of that dock and
Yeah.
see if it would fit.
Absolutely.
Councilor Fast.
Oh, just to say, when I took one of your pilot runs there a year or so ago, I was talking to maybe not you folks exactly, but some of the crew about pointing out the competition in the water taxis and anyway, both those docks are the big surround docks where the ferry comes in. Both of them are municipal docks. And Just so, we can, if you can fit in there, I think you can let us know if you think it's worth talking about.
Sure, absolutely.
Anything else as we wrap up here?
No, thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Well, thank you for coming out to Bowen on this
Yeah,
sunny day.
yeah, it's not a hardship.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
And moving on to 5.1, we have our CAO updates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, the CEO update for the first quarter of 2026. Trying to capture in the update things that normally wouldn't report. And acknowledging that there's a big team around a lot of all this work that I do, so. Some of the highlights. Stuff I've been working on and particularly is a lot of work on ferry advocacy and was remained a major focus of mine. Including some senior level BC Ferries engagement. Specifically on the dangerous goods sailing issues. Data access and the successful launch of our ferry cameras, which was a very popular initiative on that. Did a lot of work on continued housing discussions, including early engagement with some developers and ongoing dialogue with Bowen Island Resilient Housing Corporation. Trying to work with them on the governance and organizational capacity front. We've been strengthening our procurement modernization through standard contracts and services. Staff have been working on that. And I've been supportive to try and get some standardization there. We've been as a team working on our policies and creating new administrative directives. So we created an administrative directive on municipal hall closures during temporary closures, snow days, power outages, that kind of things. And all these are informed by our risk assessments that we've done. Looking at implementing a pilot program for compressed work weeks for staff. It's industry. There's a lot. Most municipalities, I would say, have some form of a compressed work week. So we're working on that just to enhance the employee retention and job satisfaction and provide people with an option to work some extra hours to be able to go into town and deal with the things they need to when they need to. In terms of staff development, we've done targeted training, worked on job description standardization amongst the various jobs we have. I delivered a report writing and presentation workshop during the quarter to staff just on tips and tricks I've run across in my various roles I've had over the years. Some best practices I've learned from other places and colleagues. And then tomorrow, we're doing a 1-day in-depth corporate training session on public sector procurement. And so that's going to happen all day tomorrow and hopefully get everybody reading from the same hymn sheet on the procurement that we need to do. So excited about that. And then I've also with assistance from staff started the planning process for pre and post-election council orientation and seeing how we want to structure that, what speakers we want to bring forward, what pre-election material for candidates we want to provide. So that's been underway. So those are some of the main highlights of my work in the last quarter and the assistance I've gotten from staff. So great.
With the council for any questions or comments?
Just that, I was looking at, I find it really useful to see the new staff hires, just so I can kind of know what's going on and who's who, and then, congratulations too on, filling the engineer, the, head of operations position, Sarah Castillo,
Yes,
which I recognize was after you wrote this report. So
yeah, that one was gonna make it into Q2, but yes, I would like to acknowledge that we do have a now permanent Director of Engineering and Operations, Sarah Kasari, who's been acting in the role since last November, but was hired in September as the Manager of Infrastructure. And we are going out to a job posting right now on the Manager of Infrastructure. And our hope is to be at full strength again within a month, and really pushing forward the asset management program. And we've had some great early discussions on building on the momentum of the last budget cycle that we had and seeing how we can further strengthen that through an asset management lens. And a lot of good ideas were exchanged there, so very excited about that.
Right on. Not see any further questions. I'll look for a motion to receive, please. Moved by everybody, moved by Councillor Fast and Councillor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.